Hello everyone and welcome to our general Q&A. We are joined this week by Mod Kirby, Mod Arcane, and Mod Tide with a possible special appearance from Mod Elena later in the stream. So how is everyone? Let's go to Tide first.
I'm doing pretty good. I managed to cut my hand while washing up the other day. That was funny. Glass broke on me in the sink. So other than that, I'm doing good.
Still smiling. That sounds really brutal. I'm sorry to that. How about you, Kirby?
I'm doing great. The stream team keep giving me god swords and I'm not entirely sure why, and one for each hand apparently. Okay, that's me sorted for the rest of the stream. Carry on.
You look pretty deadly. How about you, Arcane? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Just battling the onslaught of Reddit people trying to give me a bad name constantly. That's my week, pretty much.
Keep fighting the good fight, definitely. Yeah. Hopefully a good week, though, nonetheless. Right, so originally we had planned for this stream to be an amazing lore stream with Mod Ed and Mod Errol, but we're moving that to next week because of some absences in the team. This stream is going to be a really general Q&A. We've taken questions from various different areas of the community. So before we go into questions, let's go through some announcements. First of all, ! Game update. Guardians of the Rift brings you a whole new way to train runecrafting. We've made some initial changes to the minigame following your feedback. Check them all out using ! Game update. The next announcement is ! Account security. We're committing to leveling up our account security and services over the next year. Find a helpful summary recap of the stream that we held last week, written up in a blog format. And then lastly, we have ! Board game. A RuneScape board game is being launched on Kickstarter, which is super cool. We mentioned it in the news post this week. Get ready to meet your favorite NPCs and explore the world of Gielinor as we bring RuneScape to the tabletop for the first time ever. Sign up to be among the first to hear about this campaign and bring your favorite board game to life. Hopefully your favorite when it comes out. Just a reminder, Game Jam is happening next week. There will be no game update next week. The next update will be the Easter event, which lands on the 13th of April. All right, let's get into some user-generated content this week. First up, we have Life Finds a Way by Richard Mao 5. Any thoughts, guys?
How is that plant growing there?
With great difficulty, but great perseverance.
Do you reckon it's got his roots just chilling underneath the rock?
Yeah, you get plants like that growing all the time on weird rocks. I'm just very cautious that I am being hoisted another god sword here.
Oh no.
Alright, moving on to the next one is Sword Tattoo. So it's old school RuneScape tattoo, which is quite fitting considering Kirby was wielding some of these awesome weapons. I don't know if you wielded a D-skimmy though. Like a D-long sword.
This is a D-long, I think.
This is by Sith Lord of Coffee. And next up we have Magic Bow. I think it's a 3D printed twisted bow, which is super awesome. I love all of the 3D stuff people have been making recently. This is by Super Demo 2. What do you guys think? Did you have this on your desks?
Absolutely, look at the detail in it.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
this is a question for like T-Bow in general, but why is the string green? Like, what part of the Olm is the green string from?
Who knows?
Listen, Arcane, don't ask questions you don't want answers to, and believe me, you do not want the answer to that question.
That's for the next general Q&A. I've already got it sorted, guys. And lastly, we have Arcade Machine. So anyone got $11 in quarters by Yeti. Oh my goodness.
My first question is,
how did they get that?
Does that actually work? Or is that just someone put a screen behind an arcade cabinet and didn't actually hook up the buttons?
I could imagine that working, using the joystick to move the mouse cursor. It'd be pretty cool if it does work.
That is So impressive if it works. Seriously. Wow. Wow.
Imagine you run out of time and you're in the middle of something. Got to put in another quarter.
Sick. I haven't seen one of those arcade kind of setups in ages. The last time I went to an arcade was when I was a kid, so good nostalgia vibes. All right, moving into the general Q&A then. So this week I saw a lot of questions about dates of upcoming launches, so forgive me, we're going to quick fire through the dates and stuff first, and then we'll go into more of the general questions. So first question is, we've seen a roadmap now for the Jagex launcher, which was great, but we haven't received a time frame with dates just yet. The PVM community are curious about whether the RuneLite version of the Jagex launcher will be available in time for Tombs of the Massacre. So I asked the publishing platform team, and they've confirmed that we're aiming to have the RuneLite version in the Jagex launcher by the end of April. We're really keen to ensure that RuneLite is supported on the Jagex launcher as soon as possible. So that looks like it should be okay. But obviously we'll keep you updated if anything else happens, if we have any news to share. So next question is, when is this year's Easter event set to release? Are there any teasers that you would like to share? I know that Kirby, you have a teaser that you would like to share about Easter. I have asked Mod Havoc. He's given me a very cryptic sentence. Basically, the Easter Bunny is having some delivery issues. Something about chocolate melting in hot temperatures. There might be some camels and a kebab involved. So stay tuned for that. What do you have for them, Kirby?
Are you familiar with the Alice in Chains song Man in the Box? That's it. That's the tease. That's all you're getting.
All right. Do your digging, guys. You know what to do. Right, next question. When can we expect the pet reclaim changes and the elite clue casket changes from Poll 76? So I have an answer for that. Basically, we know the major changes that you guys want to see from Poll 76. The team is very aware, and we want to ensure that we get these changes out to you as quickly as possible. In the meantime, I know that Mod Arcane, who's
he just left.
Right
he just straight up left.
He's like, bye. He's actually shared the KC reduction changes, like the numbers, via his official account. This will allow you to see what kinds of grinds that you're looking at when those changes come out. I know that some of you have pointed out that some of these changes don't seem like huge, major changes. They should be quick to get into the game. We just want to give you a bit of context on that. We need to ensure that each of these changes are properly tested and that it fits into the work that we have each week. Development on the main game is paused for the next week as we have Game Jam, which some of you guys may know about. We work basically to ideate some new ideas during that whole week. We don't develop on the main game in that week, but we're working to create like exciting and cool projects for you. Poll 76 changes are developed to fit in basically as soon as we can get them in. We can't just stick them in if there is a lot of other stuff in that week that needs changing. So for Guardians of the Rift, there was lots of initial feedback changes that we needed to prioritize. In reference to the KC changes as well, we want to clarify that it's not just about changing numbers. We need retroactive checks to complete tasks for players. QA will need to test the new numbers, make sure that they work, make sure that the retroactive checks work, and it's a lot of different KC reductions across the board. So there is a lot of individual elements that will need a lot of testing. So the TLDR is like, we're getting it to you as soon as possible. We understand which changes you want, and we will endeavor to get them to you ASAP. No game update next week, so we're looking at the following week, hopefully. If there's anything anyone wants to add, feel free. I can move into the next question if you guys don't want to add anything.
I just want to highlight the importance of getting QA stuff done, because I broke the tutorial for Guardians of the Rift like 10-15 minutes when it launched, because I put in a hotfix that was one line to try and help out with something else, and that just broke the tutorial temporarily. I'm sorry if you're affected by that, by the way, but like getting stuff through QA properly is important.
Amen. Amen. Right, next question. Is there an ETA for when we might see another blog for the equipment tier rebalancing changes? Will the changes be as stated in the most recent blog? If so, are there plans for when this update will go live? I have poked Mod Aiza for this. It's looking like these changes will be coming out around May time. The only change since the last blog from December is that we'll be making scythe requirements 80 attack and 90 strength. The other items will be as per the tier rebalancing blog that was published in December of last year. So go check that out to refresh yourself on those changes. You can expect them to come out around May time. Lastly, and then we'll get into some actual developers answering questions for you. When is the timetable for the rerun of the DMM Reborn Finals? Will we ever get Deadman Mode 2022 again? So Modsani is actually going to be publishing a Gazette ASAP. I'm not sure if it's already published yet, but it should be out today. In short, we'll be looking to run the beta on April the 20th, with another happening the week after, but only those who participated in the 2021 DMM finale will look to hold the rerun in May. You can expect more information in the Gazette that should be published today, but wanted to get that information out to you guys on stream. All right, so now we can actually talk to the developers about some stuff. So our next question, sometimes players get frustrated that new content takes a long time to come out. Can you guys go into some detail about what it takes to go from coming up with a new idea to actually releasing it? What steps do you go through in order to make sure that content is enjoyable by everyone? I want to ask Tide first.
Sure. So first things first is coming up with the idea. Then you got to design it, figure out how everything's going to work, how the players will interact with everything. Is it going to be fun to play? Then you go and you make the content. You'd have playtester out, making sure it's all fun to play, and balancing as well at the end of it, and you go from there.
Solid. What about you, Kirby? What do you feel like?
The fun part is at some point you do also need to poll it, which is done in the design stage, and that's a lot of back and forth with, I mean, admittedly for me it's back and forth with the CM, but the CM do it through the community, so they get heavily involved sometimes, just helping us improve the design as well, generally, which can pad out a lot of the work we need to do in the early stages. And then we also have to consider how long we want to develop the thing for in the first place, because as much as we'd like to work forever on our projects until they're actually perfect, at some point you, the players, would probably like to play them as well. So a lot of things need to go into consideration to actually planning and designing and developing projects. I just want to sit in code. All I want to do, but it's not that easy.
Polling is definitely a fun part of the process, but a lot of players can sometimes want more information that we have. I noticed with Guardians of the Rift, there was some stuff that we hadn't yet sorted out in the design phase, or the XP rates in particular. I felt like it was difficult to give an exact estimation of XP rates to players in the blog stage before the content had actually been designed. So that's kind of a lot of the part of the process of it. But we basically want to strike a good balance between giving you as much information as possible, but also incorporating that feedback so that we can make sure that the content is really enjoyable. Okay, next question. Is there any update to the current roadmap? How are the other projects progressing? And do you have any leaks or work in progress pics? So I talked to Mod Kieran. Raids 3 is coming along really well, and hopefully Mod Arcane can expand on this in due course. We're currently working on the design phase of a smithing update called Giant's Foundry. We shared a bit about that, or will be sharing some more information in the Gazette, and a blog should be coming around mid-April to let you know more about this proposed update. I am also in the planning another summer summit, which you can hopefully expect. And we also have a teaser image for TOA, so we get that on screen. Looks absolutely gorgeous. I'll let Mod Arcane speak to it in a second. We don't want to give too much away about this room. Keen lore lovers might know from the detail which room this is going to be, so hopefully some of you guys already can figure some stuff out. The artist, which is Mod Jerv and Mod Grub, wanted to emphasize problem solving here. So puzzles, scrolls, placed around the path. There's also the theme of the Pantheon being repeated around the room. What do you guys think?
I love the concept art we're getting now. Like, it's obviously mainly for the artists, right? But it gets the developers so excited because I've been staring at placeholder models for like 6 months, and it's really tiring to see the same placeholder, like basic monkey or scarab model all the time. Like, it's hard to get really excited about that, but obviously it's just this early days development. So as soon as art starts coming in with the concepts art and eventually models and animations, etc., it gets me pumped up.
Yeah, I don't know, there's something funny about placeholder art though. We used to have a bunch of characters walking around with like lime green or bright pink weaponry and gear. It just looks silly. I do love it.
Oh. Remember when the Sepulchre had the bots being fired out?
Yeah. Entire people being used as a projectile.
Following on from this, though, Arcane, can you speak a bit about, the kind of work that you're doing on Raids 3 without giving too much away? What can you tell players that isn't secret?
I could give them some sort of update in terms of where it's at, since obviously it's this big black box, right? Of like, oh my god, I've been working on TOA for ages. We're currently in the phase of we've written all the designs of the bosses, we've implemented like the functionality of every boss. So technically the raid is playable in a really, really rough, probably not very fun state. We're currently in this phase where we're effectively going through each boss after all the functionality, special attacks are all created, etc., and just playing them and just going like, does this work? Because some things are really good on paper, but then you actually implement it and it's like, okay, this doesn't really work. I've reworked entire bosses that seemed really cool on paper, and then I absolutely hated it. So then we're just reworking it and just trying to make the bosses fun, make them have their own gimmick, a core identity. And this is just going to be a constant iterative process. But we're getting to the point now where every boss is starting to feel pretty good, and we're pretty confident in the boss designs. That's not to say there isn't much more to do. We need to obviously iterate a bunch of numbers and difficulty balancing, and then we've got invocations and all the other systems that the raid has, right? But the most important part of the raid is the bosses at the end of the day. And we're getting to a really good state on that now. Starting to become something that seems like a piece of content as opposed to just random models doing random effects, which is cool.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for the update. Have there been any giga-busted or funny things so far for you, Arcane, that haven't worked out yet? Or is that are we too early on in the stage to find those kinds of bugs?
There's probably been some weird mechanics that I've just created badly. I think one thing I just didn't realize is, on paper, it's really easy to say, like, oh, this boss summons this minion that does X or Y, and the players are supposed to interact with it in this way. And then you do that like 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden you've just got this boss that just constantly summons like dozens of ads that all do different unique things, and it's just absolute chaos to try and like figure out what the hell is going on. That's something that I feel like I've learned in this process. Like, you can't just like throw like 50 mechanics at a player expecting to figure it out. There's got to be some sort of like gradual process, and maybe try and simplify some of them, have complexity where complexity is needed. Yeah, it's quite easy to get carried away in a design, like a paper design, and just do like a million things and expect it to work. Which isn't the case.
Cool. I have every faith that it will get like smoothed out, and it's going to be really, really fun. So yeah, probably not something I'm going to attempt unless it's like a really easy mode, baby mode raid. Okay, next question. I'd like to hear some discussion from the JMod's thoughts on the future of old school RuneScape. There were some serious issues around power creep and technical limitations of the game, which could eventually lead to some tough choices. What do you think you'll do for old school in this regard? Will you go the direction of RS3 or another way? Tide, how do you feel about this?
So with power creep, I don't mind as the years goes on if stuff gets slightly better and better, or we feel more niches in the sense of that. So like we have Dragonbane weapons, or just stuff like Dragonbane weapons.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like there's like probably a point we're gonna hit where like we've filled out the obvious niches for T80, and then we hit the niches for 85 and 90, 92, whatever numbers we want to get to. At some point, like, we're gonna hit a theoretical cap. I don't know when that is, and I don't know what the answer is when we get there. Just hopefully we can stave off getting there long enough that we have a solution to it by the time we get there. That is my personal main concern, although that is like probably decades away, so we have time.
I hope so. Arcane, how do you feel about it?
I think power creep's inevitable. Like, we have to release stronger things, otherwise, what's the point in playing the game, right? Like, the entire point of playing the game is present player with problem, player has to do X or Y to solve problem, and that's like gear and leveling up. Like, that's fundamentally every game. And if we just keep presenting more and more powerful things, that isn't innately creating problems, so we obviously need to create harder and harder content, and then we can sate that with better and better rewards. But that's something that everyone's generally pretty familiar with. The problem with old school is that, A, you kind of shit on old content. It's like, we want all content to be relevant, like, all the time. That's the goal. It's really sad if, like, a certain piece of content just becomes irrelevant in every way. So we kind of have to, like, think about, like, if we release this item, do other items become pointless? Like, do they have no use in the game? Does that make any bosses pointless and have no use in the game? Like, that's an issue that we have to, like, solve and generally try and be creative about it. So, like, one way of doing it is niches. That's what we've been doing for the past, like, 4 or 5 years. So you just find a niche, fill a niche. It doesn't devalue anything because it's only good in one specific place. So then previous items are still good in the other places. And that's pretty easy, but I think everyone can agree we've kind of exhausted that a bit. We can obviously create more niches, like we created Golem Bane. Obviously it's not very end game, but we created Golems and then we created Golem Bane. So we create the problem, which is a new type of monster, and then we create weapons that are good against that monster. That's fine. But they don't really interact with the entire game, and it's usually like very specific. And then the other way of doing it is what we've basically done with like Torva, right? So Torva requires Bandos, so then Bandos still has a use, so then Bandos's content still exists and thrives. And that seems to work, right? I feel like we do lose a bit of like magic from that, like not in the literal sense, but like there's something exciting about just getting like a brand new amazing item on the floor that you can pick up and use immediately. And it's kind of lame to go down this route of like, oh, it's you got this really cool drop, and I need to attach it to this thing and degrade this thing to then upgrade this thing. And I think it's okay here and there, but I'd not really want to go down the route of constantly doing that for everything. I don't think there really is a clean solution to avoid all of that. So we just kind of have to take it as it comes and find appropriate things for pieces of content. And hopefully come up with ideas that you guys are happy with as well.
And if all else fails, ERB2.
Oh no, please God no. My first week was ERB and that was interesting.
Oh, it was? Oh,
yeah.
No.
But no, thank you. I think that's a really interesting topic and you brought up some really interesting points. I can see the chat talking about invention as, you know, a kind of possible similarity to what you were saying about upgrading stuff.
Yeah, that's something a new skill would be amazing for, because like the reason we want Bandos to be useful is because the items need to have like a PVM use, right? And that's something old school kind of sucks at. All of our PV items are only good in PVM. Like our invention like changed that entire landscape where, okay, well, this item's like got a PVM use, but now it's also got like a skilling use. It's like you're breaking it down into components and using it, and there's like a million things you can use it for. So it gives the item a different demand, and that isn't strictly tied to its like PVM capabilities. And that gives you so much flexibility in terms of being like, okay, well, we can actually just devalue Ancestral now and just create better mage armor as long as Ancestral has a different purpose. But creating a new skill is famously hard. And you kind of need huge pieces of content to really justify things like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the thoughts. Okay, next question. What does the team consider to be acceptable power creep in terms of weapons from PVM releases like Raids 3. It might be a hard thing to quantify, but what do you think in terms of percentage of DPS increase compared to previous options? So Arcane, let's go to you first.
I don't think there really is an answer to this in my mind. Like, it's completely contextual. Raids should offer bigger chunks of DPS increase generally than other pieces of content. It depends on the content, the difficulty, the rarity. It depends on so many things. I think everyone can agree that a 2 or 3% jump in DPS, regardless of what grind, is probably underwhelming. And that might just be like one max hit, right? So there's probably like a minimum threshold there, but the maximum probably just scales depending on the content.
Kirby, how do you feel about it?
I guess like another thing is like, what have we done recently as well? Because like we recently released Torva. It would be kind of weird if the next like super amazing thing, like if we released Scythe 2. I mean, Scythe 2 would be nice, but wouldn't you rather have like a scythe but it was magic? I don't actually know how that would work, but you know, we haven't had an amazing magic weapon recently. So like I'm like, we need to like constantly fill the gaps we're leaving as we like raise the power level, and I feel like that's more important than just how much percent do we want to jig the numbers by. Just play it by ear, you know?
Ty, do you have any thoughts on this? Any ideas for percentage increase compared to previous?
I think this would all depend on the piece of content, really. Like, how hard is the content? What does what would the item serve for the content? If it was to have a niche or anything, you don't really want to go overboard as well, because you might all of a sudden have this really amazing item that's now the best thing to use is better than anything that you don't want to use Twisted Bow anymore, and the Twisted Bow just crashes. But you'd probably be playing
right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah,
that was the exact reason the bow power is such a problem. Is cheap in every way and good everywhere, even if range wasn't particularly amazing. Blowpipe was insane. It's just too much.
Can I ask you guys an impromptu like follow-up question? I don't know if any of you can answer, but is the power creep in terms of PVM treated differently in terms of power creep in terms of PvP? So do we try to stay away from power creep in PvP?
PvP is a weird one because they don't play on like the same sort of linear scale where the like PvPers are constantly just going to go for the next item. PvPers exist in this weird situation where technically it's not always optimal to go for the best item, hence the existence of Pures and Zerkers, where they can abuse the combat bracket system to their benefit. Obviously there is like some consideration that we don't want to overload those lower brackets either, but they do play on like separate scales, I feel.
PvP is really weird as well, because like DPS isn't always like the most important thing. Like price matters a lot in that, so you've got items like harm stuff that absolutely slap, but they're obviously a huge risk, and the economy kind of balances that. Like if you had a bunch of really cheap weapons that are amazing in PvP, that's obviously a much bigger problem than really expensive weapons and armor being really good in PvP. So like GP is a bit of a balancing point in there as well. I think the biggest thing we have to consciously avoid all the time is like max hits. Because if you all of a sudden just increase a max hit too much and people are just getting one shot like so consistently, it really hurts it. And that's kind of what led the RS3 to like the damage absorption system and like additional defensive layers that PvPers could build. So then we could keep raising the max hit in PVM, because generally that's fine, right? We can make bosses scale with that, but we can't make players scale with that outside of like obviously Veritas and Torva and what they did back then. It's a really awkward problem.
It's also like sort of why I'm scared of the new PvP armors a little bit, in that we are giving the players like another percentage bonus, and it's probably fine now, but as we release more and more gear into the game, that's another amplification, and at some point people are just going to get one shot. It's probably fine, and we can probably deal with the numbers as they come up, but it's just something that's been plaguing my head for like weeks now, in that, are we just going to get people one shot in PvP? Is that okay? It might be okay. If we have like ways to play around it, like with prayers or like special mechanics or something, but at the point where max hits do become 99, I think we need to have a discussion.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting. Next question. Would the Gmod team consider creating new raids every 12 to 24 months, so every 1 to 2 years? Are there enough resources to make this happen? I understand that a low percentage of players interact with the content, but I believe if a healthy power creep was introduced with each raid, it would make the previous ones easier over time, which should boost the average player interaction and interest in that content. Arcane, what do you think?
I'm probably going to cop a lot of hate for this. I think raids are a really inefficient use of our time. Like, we could create 5 or 6 separate releases that could be like super interesting in depth with their own reward tables, completely unique mechanics, in the time that we create a raid. But raids just kind of hit different. Like, a raid is just so much cooler than any individual boss, and it's a completely different experience. In playing with your mates is just completely different. I don't know, like, I don't regret making raids, and I think raids are amazing, and we should keep doing them. It's a really inefficient use of time, and I don't think we should keep trying to churn them out every year or two. I think 3 years is probably a decent ratio, and then just try and create interesting things in the meantime. It's not like PVM stops as soon as a raid's development, right? I think we should do other stuff as well, like individual solo bosses, group bosses. I'd like us to experiment with different things as well. Like, you can categorize all of the bosses in Old School into 3 things. You've either got a raid, you've got a solo boss like Zora, or you've got a group boss like Core. Gauntlet's kind of different. Inferno and Fight Caves are kind of different. That's like it. I'd like us to experiment with something new that we've never done before. And obviously that's hard to think of because we've not done it before. I think it's just that the past 3 or 4 years has been a bit rough because like we had such a big boon with like TOB and Inferno and Cox in a short period of time, and then it lulled a bit. Like we did have other releases like Gauntlet and Nightmare and Nex and things like that, but they just never really hit the same as that like era of Cox, Tob, and Inferno. And I think we can do the same without just releasing raid after raid. We can just release better content after better content.
Thank you. Okay, how difficult do you guys think PVM content should be? What's the philosophy behind it? Should everyone be able to somewhat participate on release or close to? Or do you think it should be so difficult that you can't participate until you've kind of become good enough? And with that, creating something that players strive towards. Tide, what do you think about this one?
I think for me, from other games I play, I like stuff difficult when it comes out. I don't want to be walking in and face rolling everything straight away. Then this would really depend on how far your account is in. Is it maxed? Is it mid? But it would also depend on the piece of content it is.
What do you think about like a raid? Do you think everyone should be able to do a raid on release? Or should it be like you have to get good first?
For raids, I reckon you'd start off nice and easy, winning people into the raid, where you got like the first 2-3 bosses, which are nice and easy. They got 1-2 mechanics you have to get, and then as you go through, your progressing gets a lot harder. Where, for instance, like with World First races, you get stuck on one of these bosses, and you're running it like 200-300 times, and then you're like, this is what we're doing. This is how we do it. We've got this. But then
that's a nice approach.
That might be a different kind of but then that would depend on the player base really. Some people might not like that.
Fair. What about you, Arcane? What do you think?
I think there's no limit on difficulty as long as the content's accessible. TOB is the prime example of inaccessible content in Old School, and also fairly difficult, at least when you're starting. It's inaccessible because of the wipe system and the fact that you have to raid with effectively 2+ people, right? It's inaccessible because 3, 4, and 5, and most people don't want to do 5, and if you're learning 3 is kind of stressful, so then you pretty much have to do 4-mans. And then the wipe mechanic means like if you die when you're learning, which is really, really likely, your other 3 players need to be pretty competent to carry you through. It just makes a really inaccessible experience, and it makes it very hard to learn. Because like as soon as you die, you're out, and obviously they either carry on and either completes it, which means you don't get any experience, or they wipe and you don't get any experience. That makes a really inaccessible experience. I think the difficulty itself's great. I think that's great. I think it's just really awkward to learn the content. I think Dark Souls is a really good example, and the Souls franchise in general, of content that's really accessible, but also pretty difficult. Like, as soon as you die, you can just go straight back in, and go back in, and go back in, and go back in, and just bash your head against the wall until you figure it out. And that's great. You get that learning progression, and then you're like, okay, now I can do this, now I can do this, now I can do this, and you get slightly a bit further every single time. But like, TOB is like, okay, now I sit in this cage, waiting for my teammates to either succeed or fail, and then you die, and then you wipe, and you lose some gold, and you gotta re-gear and re-pot, and then you've got to maybe do the first 2 or 3 bosses again, and then you get to the 4th boss, and you die immediately again, because you can't stand behind a pillar. You see my point? Like, it's really hard to learn TOB, like, at the start. I think if TOB scaled down to 1, it wouldn't cleanly scale down as it is, but if it theoretically scaled down to 1, and a noob could just go in and just bash their head against it and just go in repeatedly to learn it, I think that would have been such a good change. Giving people the ability to learn the content at the speed that they want to learn is a really good thing. But I'm not saying you make stuff easier, you just make it more accessible to learn and get better at the content.
I absolutely love that approach.
What I'm hearing is Rage 3 is going to be the hardest video game known to mankind, but you got to respawn instantly, so it's fine.
No, I like the idea of having something that is more casual friendly. I don't know how the players feel about it. I think there's a certain element of like prestige that comes with certain pieces of content, and a lot of people are a bit worried about that prestige potentially being like devalued because it gets easier to learn. But I think ultimately that having better, like more competent players in the game can ultimately only be a good thing. So I love the idea of helping people get good, you know? It's very welcome to me. Oh, we actually have a guest that can join us. So we will transition to have our mystery guest. Well, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Who could have predicted this?
Hi.
What time do you call this? What the hell?
Sorry.
Welcome. How are you doing, Elena?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We've just been chatting a bit about like raids and PVM, so it's so good to have you here. I'll just jump into the next question then. Do you guys anticipate having to nerf any more items in the next 1 to 2 years, or even longer term, 3 to 5 years? Arcane, I'll go to you first.
I don't think we're planning on nerfing anything currently, and I can't really say that we plan that far ahead, to be honest, in terms of like, oh yeah, we'll leave it for 2 or 3 years and nerf later. I think I can see people in chat like complaining about my rants, but I feel like I have to rant again.
No, your rants are good. Go for it. Go for it.
No.
Go for it.
Okay.
You have to.
I think Magic is in a
ramble.
really shit state. I want to rework Magic, and that's not. I want to nerf Magic. I just want to rework Magic, and that's not just like the stamina spellbook. I want to rework all of it. I want to rework the gear. I want to rework the prayers. I want to rework the weapons. I want to rework the defense formula. I want to go through all the bosses and just give them actually appropriate defense levels. And there's like a million different ways of doing that. I want to rework the standard spellbook because it's so boring and the damage doesn't work in this day and age, and it doesn't scale at all. It's just weird. Like it needs so many little things changing to make it better, and I don't want it to become like, oh, it's just range but magic, because that'd be so boring, right? Like it's like, oh well, there's no difference in range and magic. You stand 10 tiles away, you click on boss and it dies, right? I'm casting a fireball instead of firing an arrow. You want it to feel different and have a unique purpose, and I think magic does sort of feel. It does feel different, and it does have its purpose. It's just not there. It's not there. There's like so many small gripes with it. It's just such a big project. It's not EOC. I'm not saying, God, we need a complete rework of everything to do with how magic works. It's just like there's so many bits, like occult being 10% over, none of the prayers having any damage, ancestral being 2%, the weapons having like 20 accuracy while range has like 100. Like I think I created a spreadsheet of like all the defenses of every monster in the game, and it's like, okay, what's their lowest defense? Is that magic? No. Okay, show the difference between magic and then their current defense. And then I had like experimental formulas like, okay, what about if we just thirded the magic defense of every monster in the game? Would magic actually become good? And there actually is like 5 or 6 new bosses and NPCs where it's like, okay, you would actually probably mage this instead. That'd be cool. But yeah.
I love your energy. Just keep giving me that energy. It's so good. What about you,
It's not
Kirby?
the
What do you
evolution
think?
of combat, it's the evolution of magic.
Yeah, EOM.
I
mean, to bring it back to the question a little bit, I can easily see us nerfing items in 3 or 5 years when we, like, inevitably, like, we are going to release an item that we think is fine, but then people are going to combine it with some other items, or maybe we just get the numbers wrong and we get the rates wrong, and like we just end up in a position over time where we got another situation where it's not maybe quite as bad as it was before combat rebalance, but like getting there, so we just like to get ahead of it and like take some down. Like, I could see us doing it quite happily, and I'm hoping like it's not going to be as controversial.
I don't know about happily.
Okay, more like reliable that okay, this isn't going to go down horribly than it went the first time.
Yeah, I hope so. By then we'll all be like over 30 years old, so hopefully people will be chill with it. Tide, what do you think? Do you think we'll have to nerf any more items soon or later?
Absolutely not. It's like what I'd like to say, but it's like Kirby said, something might come up and we'll overlook something. Players will find some weird interaction with something, and we'll be like, probably shouldn't do that. We need to stop that.
Got it, cool. Alright, so prepare for imminent community sentiment backlash for that one in 5 years' time. Okay, how do you guys generally go about designing a new boss from beginning to end? I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but now that Elena's here, hopefully we get more insight. So, Arcane, do you want to start just briefly explaining what you put into designing a new boss, and how do you decide how click intensive it's going to be, which is something I notice a lot of people like about some of our PVM content and find really enjoyable?
Kind of a hard question to answer. I think for TOA at least, we had distinct themes that we wanted to fill. So we knew we were having 5 bosses. And we had like distinct themes that were like, okay, we kind of want something in this area, lore-wise, right? And then it's like, okay, what kind of things would that monster do? Or like what actually like makes sense, is fitting? Like what are those monsters like known for generally? Like, and then it's just coming up with mechanics that are interesting off that, and you just kind of write a load of stuff in a Confluence document, and then you just kind of refine it over time and go like, okay, what would actually work and what would complement each other, and does this make a strong enough gimmick? And then you get to like actual development stage and you're implementing it and you're like, okay, this is horrible, let's delete it all, go back to the drawing board. Like, it's a very iterative process of just trying stuff out, and we're all gamers, right? So we're just looking at other games for inspiration, like what's cool, what could be done in old school. Because at the end of the day, every boss is going to be cool. If a boss isn't cool, it's boring. What's the point? Like, you want these like really cool, epic bosses that do all these wacky stuff, and you got to figure it all out. In terms of designing how click intensive it is, I don't think that's something we're really like going into like a boss design thinking like very early on. I think that's something that comes a bit later on. So once a boss is like pretty good, it's like, okay, well, do we want people to be swapping gear mid-combat, right? Like, is that going to be a core thing or an important thing? Do we want everything in this room to have the same weakness, or do we want to have varying weaknesses? Like, would that make the encounter better, or would it just make it annoying or worse? And that kind of just depends on the encounter. If you're going to be swapping all of your gear every 3 seconds, it's probably going to be a pain in the ass. But if you're doing it every now and again, it might be okay. And it's sort of like time scale as well. Obviously, the Nyloca's boss at TOB, you're swapping gear constantly. But that's only for like a minute or so. Like, it's a pretty short encounter compared to the entire raid. It's fine. Some bosses are naturally more click intensive if you just got to move a lot, right? Got to click on a lot of minions, and you got to click on dodge a bunch of things. Then it's going to be slightly more click intensive. But I think the only other click intensive activity you can add is really gear swapping and prayer swapping, and that's probably it. innately anyway, with basic mechanics.
Cool. Tide, what do you think? I think you kind of already touched on this earlier, so feel free to just gloss over it, but curious about how click intensive you design your content to be.
For me, I haven't really designed much combat content in the way. I've mainly been on the client a lot of the time, so I don't really have much experience with the bosses of designing bosses for RuneScape, fortunately.
I'm assuming with the client you don't want it to be too click intensive, right? You want it to be very simple. Okay, I'll jump over to yeah,
that settings menu is so click intensive, you know.
Toggle on, toggle off. Elena, what do you think about this one?
Oh, I'm actually in the same boat as Tide here, where I've not designed any combat-related stuff in Old School. Or at least not bosses. I've mainly been on systems like clans and group Iron Man, and there aren't that many clan and group Iron Man specific bosses in Old School, unfortunately. But I can speak to a little bit of like click intensity when it comes to content in general, because I was on Guardians of the Rift, and it's not a boss, obviously. It's more of a skilling method minigame. But the idea there was that we would have kind of several ways of reaching the goal, right? So you can kind of chill in AFK, but you can also, if you want to, be more intensive. That's kind of at least how I like to approach things. That you can get away with not clicking a lot. For example, in combat, you can get away with just doing a couple of switches, or you could go all out and do like a full 8-way switch or whatever you want to do, and get more rewards for that effort, right? And I think that's something that can be applied to most things in our game.
Love it. High effort, high reward. All right. Moving on to the next one. Are you still planning on introducing Virtus through a piece of content like a standalone boss, Arcane? I know that you're a TOA guy, so asking you this one.
We do have a piece of content planned after TOA that we're thinking of putting Virtus on as a reward.
Any leaks?
Nope.
Okay. Not a fan of vegetable, honestly.
I'll move on. Alright, I'll move on to the next one. How much do polls hinder the Old School team on content development, balance, and overall health of the game from a developer point of view? So, I just want to start this by saying we had some questions about polling and asking our general thoughts on it, and I'm sure that we will do more of like a dedicated Q&A about polling at some point. Aiza should be present when we talk about that because he's lead CM. He'll know about this in a lot more detail. But I thought it's important to include the developer's point of view on this for today's Q&A because we got a lot of questions about it. So I'll open this up. Elena, what do you think about it?
Man, you had to pick me first.
Go.
It's such a big topic, right? But overall, I think polls, they're good. Like, that's the baseline, okay? Polls are good because they elevate the quality of what we do. But that comes at the cost of things taking longer to do. Because of the whole process of, okay, we need to write a blog first so everyone knows what we're talking about. And then we need to like do iterative rounds of feedback with the community. And then it needs to pass a poll. And if we've not sold you on the content yet, then it's not going to come out. And then all that time up to that point was wasted, right? Unless, obviously, it only failed by a little bit. Maybe we can make some tweaks and re-poll it, etc. So it comes at a big risk to like time spent. And we spend a lot of time just polishing up blogs and making sure that we're selling things right. On the other hand, the great thing about that is that we can't get away with cheap solutions a lot of the time, you know? Like, we can't sell you stuff that you don't want, which automatically elevates the product a lot. So overall, I think it's good, but how it directly affects us is it does take longer to do stuff. And obviously, dev time is a bit more precious because it's more risky to start on something that isn't pulled yet. It takes a lot of planning to do as well, which can be a bit annoying, but yeah. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Fantastic answer. I really love that answer. Thank you so much. Tide, what do you think?
I think Elena said a lot of the things which are relevant, well, which are correct about polls, but they are definitely good to do, but they do make it, well, they do increase the time it takes to do a project, because you have to poll something, and if someone doesn't like if players don't like or something doesn't pass, you'll either go back and rethink about changing what that is, or just completely scrapping it altogether, or replacing it with something new. But it does mean that everything goes in most of the players like and wanted.
Fantastic. Kirby, what do you think?
There's also another thing where it does kind of like force players' expectations in a way. Like, to go back to the start of the stream where we talk about stuff that from poll 76, like, this is stuff that has been polled, and like, the players just see that it should just be a number change, surely. And like, obviously, like, the dev side is a little more complicated than that, because we can only really start doing it like once it's actually been polled and like at least looks like it's going to pass. And obviously has to go through due process and whatnot. So, but like, players just see the blog and they want it now, and like, why shouldn't they want it now? Because there's like, it's hard to give a time frame on some of this stuff, especially though it's going out between everything else. And it's just like that sort of thing in the back of your head, like, I want to give you everything, but I can't. I'm not physically capable of doing it, and
100%, I feel you on that one, especially when it comes to poll 76, because I know that players, you know, have seen it in late February. They love the changes, but we can't actually get started on the work until it passes the poll, and then time goes by and you're wondering, and so yeah. But it's great to hear your insights, guys. Next up, what are your thoughts on exploration, a new proposed skill for old school RuneScape? An idea would be that you sail to randomly generated islands, loot them, raid them, skill and kill, do the puzzles, and then bring home your loot with your mighty ship you built and customized. This would combine aspects of sailing and player-owned ports to bring an exciting skill with plenty of variation. Any thoughts? Kirby, what do you think?
This sounds like dungeoneering with extra steps. Like, the production has put down his headset, he's walked away, he's still walking away, he's gone to hide in a corner never to be seen again. Yeah, this does just look like dungeoneering with extra steps to me. And to be fair, dungeoneering is like a sick idea, and we did borrow elements from it for Gauntlet. Whether there's enough meat on the bones to warrant an extra, like an entire skill around it, is like debatable, but certainly not a terrible starting point, I feel.
Oh, Tide, what do you think? Exploration.
I think this sounds like a really nice idea, but the dev time needed for this would be immense, and the amount of dose you probably want on it would be, well, you probably want to fuel on it just to make everything go smoothly. But I really like the idea of being able to make your own ship. But yeah, the idea of being able to customize your ship as you're sailing the islands. Maybe there'll be some encounters along the way. You might get raided by pirates. You might see a shipwreck that you might have to dive down into. Get some epic loot.
That is cool. Yeah. That's seriously awesome. Elena, what do you think?
I have so many thoughts. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so first of all, it just sounds like sailing, which is fine. You can brand it whatever you want. Second of all, I want to talk about like skills in old school as a whole, because all of the pitches I've seen recently are really cool. You have exploration or sailing or whatever you want to call it, and then you have the bard skill, which looked amazing. Like, I think the problem with like introducing a new skill in old school is that the majority of people want one skill, right? But people don't want to decide on one skill because people want different things. Like, some people want engineering, some people want warding maybe, or some people want sailing. Everyone has a different idea of what a skill in old school looks like, and the problem with introducing a new skill is that, one, it needs to pass a poll, and two, we can only do one at a time, because it's a huge investment, right? And so that means that the way we need to approach it is by saying, you know, we all need to agree on one skill to come first, if we do a skill at all. And then we can do more skills eventually, right? So I think, like, a new skill in old school, first we need to all agree that, like, okay, are we doing a skill or not? And if yes, then we need to, like, kind of, you know, tune in on what could be good first. And then later we can talk about, like, okay, future skills, what do they look like, you know? But currently, I don't see us passing, like, a single skill without, like, lots of talks about, you know, and agreements as well, and in which direction to go with skills in general after. Sorry, I know I went on a tangent about, like, skills in old school in general, but yeah.
Good tangents, good tangents.
Good.
No, it's a fantastic discussion point. Right, I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to whiz through a couple of questions and then wrap up. Feel free to let me know if there's any particular questions you guys want to answer. So will you guys ever consider the possibility of some form of XP lock for PvP? I spoke to Mod Aiza about this. I have an answer from Aiza. He said, I'd be happy to see pure and skiller accounts become official game modes that people can play, will allow the locking of XP and preventing of XP gained in areas that would normally be granted. Don't have too much else to share on that, but Kirby, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Like, I'm okay blocking them gaining combat XP, but I still feel like if they were going to do something like Monkey Madness for the getting onto the island, they should have to take the defense for that. Just like you are willingly playing a limited game mode, I'm okay holding you to that game mode, but don't expect any benefits for it.
Harsh but fair, maybe? Don't know.
I am harsh.
See what the chat think. Alright, cool. Whizzing through then. There's been, this is the question, there's been a lot of PKers saying that they want the PJ timer reverted. That would leave PVMers severely in disadvantage with the boxing mechanic gone. Thoughts on that? I have another reply from Mod Aiza. He said, if the PJ timer was to be removed, then so would the NPC PJ timer. Kirby, do you have any thoughts on this one? Have you seen the feedback?
I saw the player numbers that for people in the wilderness does look like it's actually been increasing week on week since we made the changes. So I'm willing to bet, at least in the short term, we're not looking at making more extensive changes to the PJ timer, but as I said, if we were to remove the PJ timer, it would apply to NPCs as well.
Thank you. We'll see what the feedback is like in chat. Right, let's whiz through some questions. Not sure which ones to go for. I'm just conscious of time. We'll go to 22. I'd love to see a discussion between JMods of what they think is the best way to get new players into Old School. How does the team feel that we can best boost membership and get newer players engaged with the game? So I actually talked to a mod called Mod Squid, who's working on something called a content recommender, which I thought was like perfect to answer this question. I'll sum up really briefly. The content recommender basically suggests quests and milestones to work towards based on your current progress in the game. The aim is basically to improve discoverability of content, help players setting their own goals by suggesting things and explaining things and why and how they were chosen, so that you can start to make decisions on your own about what content you should be doing in-game. It's not intended to be too hand-holdy. It's just meant to flag relevant content to you and teach players in that way. Mod Squid also gave me some thoughts on other areas of the game that would benefit. So currently he feels the game is quite solo-oriented. It's even more difficult to play with your friends if they're at a high level. I know this for a fact because all of the JMods in the team are absolute gamers and I'm totally not, so it's really difficult to catch up with them. It's definitely something that Mod Squid is wanting to look into. Gameplay-wise, he thinks we would benefit from fleshing out methods of training skills at lower levels. And tutorial-wise, he also wants to revisit that. Even though the current tutorial is so iconic, the team mostly agrees that it doesn't do a great job of setting players up for success. So there's loads of different areas we could look into. I'm curious about what you guys think. Elena, what do you think about this question? How would we get new players engaged with the game?
It's a super interesting topic, and like if I knew the perfect answer, would probably have done it by now. You know what I mean? Like there's not one good solution, but there are plenty of different things we can do. I think improving like the fresh player experience is really key, because it doesn't matter how many people you get to try your game. If they quit after day one, it didn't help, you know? Like we need to get people into the game and we need to keep them in the game. And I think what Mod Squid is talking about could really help keep them in the game, which is really good. In terms of like introducing, like just making people, you know, like download the Old School app or, you know, try the game at all, it's often, I think it often comes down to like the hype around new releases and people just telling them their friends to like come play with them. And that makes me lean towards like group content, because if you could tell your friend that, hey, this new thing launched on Old School RuneScape, a game that I play, do you want to come play with me? Then that's a good way to get people into the game, right? So maybe like more group-based stuff early on in the game, I think would be like my ideal solution.
I love that. What do you think, Tide? What would get newer players engaged with the game?
I think this question is pretty broad because different things will get different people into the game. So some people might find that they want small incentives to be able to, when they do things during the game, for instance, like they get 10 attack, they can get a small item upgrade or something like that. Other people might want more of an explanation on how to do stuff, or video tutorials, for instance. So maybe making them available in-game would be something to help get people into it.
I know a lot of content creators do an amazing job in helping newer players get on, like, engaged and interested in content. Kirby, what do you think?
I think the main problem is the tutorial just doesn't set the expectations of the game. Because, like, when we think of RuneScape, we think of, like, epic PvM encounters or, like, intense skilling or quests. Like, we have so many good quests. Our tutorial teaches you how to catch a shrimp and then cook some bread. And it's like, these activities are related, kind of, but you're not really getting the experience. And I feel like that's probably, like, a more important selling point we can give to the players a lot earlier on. And we're just missing an opportunity by not at least trying to give it to them. But then how do you write a tutorial that could cover like so much? Because the game has like so much to offer. How do you like compartmentalize that in a 5-10 minute tutorial that you can give to the players and go, okay, here is our game? Yeah.
Someone just said the tutorial should be Zuck and 3 ticking. Can you imagine? Alright, perfect. Well, thank you guys for your thoughts on this. Yeah. Go ahead.
One thing I was thinking that might be another good idea is, what about a mentoring system? So if you're a new player and you've said you're a new player, when you get off tutorial and you're put into a clan where there's all these different people, and they have like a badge next to them to say, hey, these are mentors. And you could talk to them and ask them questions, and they could show you around the game and help you out.
That'd be awesome. I would love that. Be so happy. Yeah, there's no way that people could be toxic, right? Like, just no.
No way.
No
there
way.
is no toxicity in Old School RuneScape. Absolutely zero.
You guys would all be the best mentors ever. Alright, perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's 6 p.m. here, so we'll have to wrap up, unfortunately. We had a ton more questions, so we'll save those for the next Q&A that we have. I'll just wrap up really quickly by going through the announcement. So, exclamation mark game update. Guardians of the Rift changes. It's a whole new way to train runecrafting, new runecraft minigame. Elena has been working on Guardians of the Rift. She's done an amazing job, and more feedback changes are to follow. So keep an eye out for comms on that one. Exclamation mark account security. We are committing to leveling up our account security and services over the next year. There's a helpful summary recap of the account security stream that we held last week. We've written it up in a blog format to make it a bit more accessible, so type exclamation mark account security for that one. And last but not least, exclamation mark board game. A RuneScape board game is being launched on Kickstarter. Get ready to master skills, meet your favorite NPCs, and explore the world of Gielinor as we bring RuneScape to the tabletop franchise for the first time ever. Sign up to be among the first to hear about this campaign and bring your hopefully next favorite board game to life. Right, so I've also been made aware that during this stream, the Gielinor Gazette has actually been published, which should include so much more information about dates and things like that. Go check it out. We will probably plug some socials about the Gazette if we haven't already. Please make sure to check that out. Sani has done an amazing job writing it, and we've had so many devs contribute to it, so give it a read. I think that's everything. Do you guys have any final words?
My IRL bank is now worth more than my actual in-game bank. It's ridiculous.
Nice doxing yourself.
I got all these sticks!
Anyone else? Alright. Silence here. Okay, well, we'll wrap up. See you guys next time. Remember, Game Jam is next week, so you won't really see a game update. Bye!